Hey everyone, welcome to LSAT Wizard's question type explanation from logical reasoning. This is an extension of our free COVID relief logical reasoning and reading comprehension program sponsored by Ave Maria School of Law. So a special thank you to them for helping us put this all together. This has been part of our COVID relief efforts in the sense that we have a GoFundMe that the funds are going to Feeding America's COVID Relief Fund. If you find these videos at all helpful, I do kindly ask that you consider giving. We've already raised over $10,000, which is truly remarkable. So thank you everyone who has already given, and thank you in advance to those who will. Now, getting into this question type explanation series is an extension, as I said, of our lessons. We had bigger, broader lessons. If you missed those lessons, definitely feel free to go check those out. They're on my YouTube channel. They're on LSATwizard.com. You could also find a lot more on there as well. We're going to be using some terminology that we do use as part of that program. So if some of this isn't making sense, definitely go check those out. Now, specifically, this is going to be an explanation video for the role of a phrase questions. So the question type of role of a phrase, conceptually what they're trying to ask you is they're going to, in the question stem. So when we actually have a question here, the reference to the complaint of, and they kind of talk about this, plays which one of the following roles. So that's how we know we have a role of a phrase question. What they're generally asking you is they're asking what role a particular line from the argument plays. So what's happening from a question stem, the author's comments about blank plays which of the following roles, the one we just saw, there's the sentence and they actually quote it, does which of the following, does what to the author's conclusion. They won't usually use the quotation marks like I used. I'm using quotes in the sense that they will very often go word for word with what that line is, though sometimes they may just reference it more generically like I indicate in this one. The author's comments about this generic idea plays which of the following roles. Either which way, your job is to identify a particular phrase from the argument and understand what role. At a broad level, is it the evidence? Is it the conclusion? Is it a main conclusion versus subsidiary conclusion? Is it the opposition's argument? Is it evidence against the opposition? There are a lot of different roles we've talked about. This outline from lesson 1 talks about it. In lesson 1, we do go into the big pillar of logic we call structure. So definitely go check all that stuff out if you're unfamiliar. Now, in terms of this question, with every question rather, what we do is we have two thoughts. We have a pre-answer thought. That's what we think about while we're reading the stimulus. And the test is what we should be looking for while what we should be thinking about while we're reading the answer choices. So for a role of a phrase with pre-answering, first identify the conclusion. Don't worry about the line they're asking about first. That's a big pitfall people have with these question types. I want you to first identify the conclusion, then go locate the phrase and underline it. So I try to even highlight it on this format. This is the official format that you'll see on test day when it's a digital format. What I try to do is use maybe one color and underline for the main conclusion and then a different color underline for the line they're asking about. Now in this one, okay, and sorry, just to finish up the explanation here. So pre-answering, that's what we're going to do. Break those two down. Then we're going to mentally ask ourselves, what is the general breakdown in our own words of relationship between those two different phrases we identified? Is it evidence for the argument? Is it against the argument? If we can get more nuance, great, but I don't stress too much at a pre-answering level. What happens is this question can get very tricky at a testing level. In fact, if you did watch the video, you saw that I was kind of focused. A student was explaining something and I was running out of time and I even fell for a mistake. So it's something that you have to be very cautious with these questions. They can get very tricky. Okay, so getting into this here, what we're going to do is break this one down. First, we have the main conclusion here. What awaits us is probably a mere alteration of the human mind rather than its devolution. Now, let me actually say one last thing. In case you already didn't do this question, go find this question. It's the June 2007 section 2 question 11. You can Google and find on LSAC's website the official June 2007 test for free, and you can go try it. Pause the video before I do this explanation video here. Now, with that being said, going into it. So this yellow phrase is going to be the main conclusion. Okay, notice how when I identified the question type 2, it plays which of the following roles. I didn't even look at what they're talking about. I really don't even want to anticipate. I just want to read it thinking about what the main conclusion is. So I identified this. Now the giveaway is the language so. So they have a first sentence, then they say but, which is that negative transition. So the question becomes, as they transition from this but into the last line, what is the transition? And they say so. So basically what comes after the but, this several centuries ago, is being used in some way to support this main conclusion. So when we do ask about this, the reference to the complaint of several centuries ago. So several centuries ago, that's exactly this. The complaint was that certain intellectual skills, such as the powerful memory and extemporaneous eloquence that were intrinsic to the old culture, were being destroyed by the spread of literacy. Now, what is the role of that? It's playing kind of two roles that I want to point out here. The but indicates that it's something counter to this first line. This first line is the common complaint. We call that an alternative perspective or the opposition. And this pink is being used to attack what they are saying. If we are trying to get more into like broader methodology of it, this is something that is a different example besides electronic media. So it was something about how other circumstances we thought we were getting this corroded intellectual skill, but it didn't end up happening. Okay, so they're giving us that to then conclude that, hey, these people probably what awaits us isn't going to actually be that, but instead it's probably a mere alteration of the human mind rather than this evolution. So I'm thinking it's countering that first line / also supporting the main conclusion. Now, if we look at the correct answer, it's an example of a cultural change that did not necessarily have a detrimental effect on the human mind overall. So what we were saying is, yeah, the common complaint is that electronic media is going to have this negative effect. And they're like, look, we had several centuries ago this complaint where there were other, the intellectual skills were being destroyed by the spread of literacy. So in this one, they're saying that literacy, the spread of literacy instead of electronic media was at people's cautionary tale, like, whoa, spread of literacy, this is going to be bad for our brain. And they said, and what they said is, look, obviously that didn't end up happening here. So instead, we probably won't have what these common complaints. We don't have to worry about these common complaints. And so that's what C is saying, is that we don't necessarily have to have this negative impact with the human mind. Now, in terms of going through the incorrect answers, when we're reading this and it says evidence supporting the claim that, I'm okay with this. This is where I'm okay with the language evidence supporting the claim that. We know the pink is evidence supporting our main conclusion. But what are they saying here, alleging rather, in this answer is the main conclusion, that the intellectual skills fostered by the literary media are being destroyed. This was actually what those common complaints were. This is that opposition. A is saying that it's supporting the opposition, which is incorrect. An illustration of the general hypothesis, maybe you could argue that it's an illustration of our main conclusion, the general hypothesis being the main conclusion. But what they're getting at, alleging, is the hypothesis being advanced is that intellectual abilities are inseparable from the means by which people communicate. And this orange is something that we really don't have anything to back that up in this stimulus. So that makes it incorrect. D is actually the one that when a student said it was right, I kind of was agreeing with it while I was going fast in our bigger course, but it's very tricky. There's a very tricky question, tricky answer choice rather, and it highlights the problem with the LSAT of reading every single word. So evidence that the claim that. So I'm fine that it's evidence that the claim that. So again, this is something that they're trying to conclude. The intellectual skills required and fostered by literary media. And what I was drawn to, I'm going to get rid of all of this just to show you where that pink came from. They're talking about how electronic media, the opposition was saying, the opposition was saying that electronic media have corroded the intellectual, and I'm going to do it here, the intellectual skills required and fostered by the literary media. So when I'm seeing structurally, it says evidence that the claim of pink are being lost is unwarranted. And I saw that it's unwarranted. I was like, okay, yeah, that I like that degree that this line in question, the several centuries ago line, is attacking that opposition and saying that it's unwarranted. They didn't say that it's technically false. They're like, it's probably something else. So they're saying that it's unwarranted. I liked that degree. Okay. But the issue here of why this is incorrect, okay, intellectual skills required and fostered by the literary media is what they're talking about. But what they were saying is what I have in yellow, that the electronic media is corroding. It's corroding, or it has corroded the intellectual skills. In this answer choice, it says that they are being lost. Intellectual skills required and fostered by the literary media are being lost. It's as simple as that. That's a different degree. Corroded is a relative decrease. Lost is saying it's gone. That is a difference. That is a logically relevant difference, and that makes D incorrect. Now, E, possible evidence. So they're saying that it was the orange again there is possible evidence mentioned and then dismissed. As soon as I get to this then dismissed, they did not dismiss it. And so I can get rid of E. So that's going to be the explanation to this question and to our role of a phrase questions. If you're looking for more, go to lsatwizard.com, follow our course, sign up for one of the explanation videos, one of our video courses that has a lot more explanation videos to a lot more of these questions. Reach out with any questions. Otherwise, stay tuned for more explanations to come.